come in as they enter. I'm John Lee with St. Louis Real Estate Investors Association, and we are here with Davis and Travaglini LLC. And today we have Christine and Christopher. Kathy may or may not be able to join us. And if it's okay, we are recording this for a replay. So, Christine, go ahead and fill us in. What's going on this week?
So it was our first week of being back in court, so to speak. We had court by video conference hearings instead of in person. So Chris was in the city on Wednesday, and he'll be able to tell you about that. And then I had St. Louis County yesterday. It went pretty well, considering. These were cases that were previously set for a court date back in March, but were canceled because the courts shut down before that court date could happen. So these aren't any of the new things that we filed since Corona started. They're just stuff we'd filed back in February, but it hadn't gotten to have court yet. We finally had a court date. We used Zoom video in St. Louis County. It went fairly well. We've also used, they were allowing us to, in St. Louis County, to take a default judgment if the defendant didn't appear, which was nice that we could at least do that. So if the defendant did not appear at all, and did not otherwise contact the court to say they couldn't appear or do something, we were allowed to take a default judgment. Now, when we'll ever be able to send the sheriff is a whole other story, because they haven't started that yet, but we were able to take a default judgment if we needed to. For any one that did appear, at least with Zoom video, they have what's called these breakout rooms that the judge was able to send each attorney into with that defendant on the case, so that we could privately talk and discuss the case to see if we could settle it or not. If we were able to settle it, we had two options. We could either go back in front of the judge and verbally recite the terms of the agreement, and it would have been put on the record as far as what the terms of the consent judgment were. And then I would have later submitted those terms in written form to the judge with to sign off on, that he would have, because we had the recording where the defendant was agreeing to those terms. I didn't have to do that. I did have a few people show up. I didn't have to put any on the record and do it that way. I was doing DocuSign. Hopefully a lot of you are familiar with that. But what I did was, while I was in these breakout rooms with them, if we could come to an agreement, I had all the terms done up in a document that then I emailed to them while we're in the breakout room for them to electronically sign the consent judgment. It immediately gets sent back to me. I hit the button to sign it, and then defendant has a copy. They can leave the Zoom hearing, and that's what I file with the court. So I did that on a couple of my cases, and that worked out very well. Because I didn't need to wait for the judge to be available to be able to record and recite the terms. The defendant didn't need to wait around either, which was nice, because there was about 240 cases on the docket yesterday. And it took about 45 minutes for the judge to even just call through all of the cases, which was kind of a long time if you're sitting on the phone, which a lot of the defendants were doing. They were accessing through their phone. We lost at least one of my defendants signed on, but by the time then it was that defendant's turn for us to talk to them, they were gone. They never came back in. It wasn't until a few hours after the docket that I got a call from them saying the defendant had left a voicemail that they got knocked off, couldn't get back in, couldn't otherwise connect. But I did able to at least get a cell phone number that I could call the defendant. So that worked out. If we couldn't work out anything, I'm not getting trial dates yet in the county. They are still trying to figure out how they're going to do a trial, because we're not having in-person hearings. So they're trying to figure out what they need to do, either to set up the trial by Zoom or to have some special setting that once they're allowing people to come back into the court. I think they're struggling with the fact that there are multiple divisions in the county that may need to have a trial, a bench trial, that they have to make sure that they're not having too many people come through the court or do anything like that, and to keep all their social distancing and protections for everyone in the court right now. They're still concerned about that and how they're going to do that. So if I couldn't work out a case in the court video conference yesterday, then it just got continued to a new court date. And that new court date was a month. It was July 2nd was the court date I was getting, which meant the case just was continued. We have to show back up on July 2nd. Hopefully by then, if we still can't come to an agreement, they'll give me a trial date by then. But I was even, and this goes back to what we, I think, have been saying 3 months ago to our clients is, you know what, we don't know when we're going to get a judgment or when we're going to get them out. So even if you aren't inclined to give them extra time to pay, you may not have any choice. And if they're going to pay you a little bit just to get something, then at least give us that authority to try and work that out if we do get a court date and we're still in the position where we can't tell you with any certainty when we'll be able to have a judgment or set a trial, or even if we have a judgment, when we can get the sheriff out there. Because right now, at least in St. Louis County, we're still up in the air on the whole sheriff execution situation. There's still the stay order. There is no indication when that stay order will be lifted. I really don't anticipate that it's going to be lifted anytime in June. I think if we're lucky that they will resume those in July, but I don't even know for sure. I can't even tell you that we've heard anything that effective a certain date. We're still up in the air on that. So even ones where we were in court yesterday getting judgments, you know, we were giving until sometimes end of July or even August just to get a consent judgment and get terms. Even if we were saying just to pay a little bit, you know, something's better than nothing. Plus, you then got your judgment now, so that if they did default on it, we could file the sheriff execution, and then once they resume those, you can get that instead of waiting until what could be the middle or end of July before we get any kind of a trial date. So the next, they're not even being very open about what court dates are going to be available right now. Normally, I know at least 6 months in advance what my court dates are going to be. And so if I have a client call, I can say by whatever date, if I'm filing here, this will be our initial court date. Right now, I know July 2nd is a court date. I just don't know if they're going to limit the number of cases they're going to allow us to have on a court date. I'm still waiting for a court date to be issued for stuff I filed the last week of April and then all through May. I still haven't gotten notice of any of those court dates. So the only other thing that they have decided to change, starting with the July court dates, is that each of the bulk filers, and a bulk filer is when you've got an attorney that files over 50 cases a year. So they're given a bulk filer status, and which means you're assigned to the same judge in the same division on the same day each week for court. So what they've done for starting with the July court dates is they're giving the bulk filing attorneys a special time. So we'll have the 9 o'clock hearing time. Another attorney will have a 10 o'clock hearing time, and yet another one would have an 11 o'clock. So that at least it doesn't put us where we have 200 cases where the judge is trying to read through all the cases, find out who's here, and then try and get everyone into these breakout rooms are situated to figure out. Because I think part of the issue might be that a lot of people are calling in on their phones. They're having to sit there for what could be a couple of hours before they even get to meet with the attorney to talk to them. Wow. So their batteries are dying, or they're draining, or they have to, go to work or have something else to do. Mm-hmm. So I think they're trying to at least separate it to try and get the docket smaller. So that's why I say I don't even know if they're going to limit it even more to say, okay, Christine, you only get 40 cases for your spot each week, or maybe it will be unlimited. Oh, we don't know yet, because I haven't even gotten any of the summonses for July 2nd yet. So I don't know what they'll do. I think and all they're telling us about trials are that we're working on it, and then as soon as we figure it out, we'll let you know. So that just means to me that at least as far as in June, there will be no trial set. Okay. I'm hoping they get it figured out so that come July, we're able to have a trial of some kind, whether it is by Zoom, or whether we're allowed to go into court if it's just a few of us that are going to be in the courtroom at a time. I don't know. So we're still waiting for an update on that. Okay. And that's really the update for the county. I'm going to give you to Chris now. Okay. He's going to be able to tell you how the city is doing things. And he may or may not have an update with St. Charles, but I'll let him let you know that. So here's Chris.
Morning. So the city is not too dissimilar in the county. They're trying to stay lockstep with each other so we don't have conflicting things. They've taken a couple different policies, and then we've got a little more hard information in the county. They are not taking defaults or having any in-person trials through the month of June. So if you have a case that you filed and has been continued and you get later on in the month of June for some reason, they're just going to continue. If the defendant doesn't show up, they'll continue until July for a second date. And if they don't show up then you could take your default. The reasoning behind this is that they say, well, the sheriff can't come out anyway, so what's the point? We'd rather not have a bunch of set-asides and therefore have to redo it. So that gives me an idea that, along with Christine, that they're not going to be doing sheriff's evictions until July, knowing that they have probably hundreds of backlogged ones. That means any new case we have on, even if we get a default, probably means August before you're getting them out, end of July. Okay. So that's just, you're just going to have to expect it. The good news potentially is I have heard the judge mention today that their understanding is on Monday, the city is going to start issuing new summonses, which they haven't done since March 27th. So I know some of you said you've mailed cases in, you should start getting next week, possibly as early as next week, your court dates. That's probably going to be July. It'll probably initially be WebExes, which is what the city's doing, call-in or video link. It's not as complex and as the county. If your tenant shows up on a WebEx docket, what they're doing is saying, all right, we're going to pick a new date for you guys to come back. In the meantime, exchange phone numbers, call each other. If you can work it out, great. If not, we'll set it for trial. So I don't know how that they're going to do it any different if, say, you're without an attorney, but that's how they handled us this month. They might decide to do things different in July, but we're just going to see. They say they might have in-person court in July, but initially they're going to send out the WebEx stuff, and if they change their mind, then they'll send out additional information once they get that. So you're going to have to kind of be flexible and move around from there. If you had filed for the sheriff, I was under the impression that they were going to extend the orders. I got a bunch returned yesterday that I had filed beforehand that I'm trying to determine whether I need to refile or if I can just get that extended. Right now, nobody's calling me back. So if you did have a sheriff's execution that was scheduled or filed previously, you may want to check to make sure that your date hasn't expired. Check your order. It'll say an expiration date on the bottom right-hand corner. and you may need to refile a new one to get back in line. I'm hoping they're going to give me an exception and just give me new ones, but so far my guy in the execution department and every 6 people I've called have not returned my phone calls at this time. So we'll see if that happens. St. Charles, things are moving at this stage. If you file the new case in St. Charles, it's going to be relatively normal, they're telling me. Come July, people are going to be in courtrooms. They're going to be not a lot, they'll have to spread everybody out. And I don't know if that's going to mean some people sit in the courtroom, other people hang out in the halls. But if you have St. Charles cases, it's pretty much business as usual up there. Hopefully that stays that way. The bigger issue I'm having more immediate issues with my clients is coming to with problem tenants. The police, particularly in the city, are not doing anything right now. They're not going to help you out. We are, I think, in a stage where starting next week, I can file for emergency evictions. My judge seems open to it to get me in, but she doesn't even know how it's going to work because you're going to need to have people in the courtroom, which technically they're not allowed to do until July. So we're going to have to see that. I've got one in particular with prostitution and heroin usage that I'm trying to get out. And they're, but we've tried calling the, I say, don't call the police because you're going to nuisance. We've tried calling the police and they're saying, we don't care. Drugs are not our problem right now.
Yeah.
And I suspect with the protests, drugs are even less of a concern with the city police. So you're kind of on your own. At this point, I don't have a lot of good news other than the fact that we are at least moved to phase 1, which should allow me to get something in if I can ever get a clerk to call me back. Because the judge has given me approval, but the clerks have their own rules about whether they can issue summonses. My guess is since it's Friday, I'm not even going to fight the fight, and I'll file it next week.
Well, and the problem is, I think, I'm not sure about the city. I know in the county that a lot of the employees are all, which means a lot of the clerks are all working from home, and they're all working remotely. So trying to call anyone at the court right now and get them to actually answer can be a little bit difficult right now, because they may only, if they're going into the courts at all, and in the county, I think some of them will work maybe 2 days a week and then they're off the rest, and they work in, so that everyone's not in there on the same days. So there could be 2, 3, 4 days that you're not getting a call back because they're just not in the office to get the message. So that's a little frustrating too. And but again, this is just how it is right now, and we may not like it. And I'm especially one of them. I'm very frustrated by the whole thing, but there is unfortunately, we're doing everything we can do. We're moving through things as quickly as we can, and there's just some things where our hands are tied, your hands are tied, where we just can't do anything because nothing is going forward on that. I didn't mean to cut Chris off. I'll give him back.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the update. I guess if you want to start some questions.
Yeah, if they have any
If
questions.
you got any questions, we can try our best, but
Yeah, Chris, we have one from Patrice here. It says, I believe I have a 441. I think that's what it is called. Squatter is bringing gunfire and prostitution into my apartment. Does that qualify as a 441? And if not, what qualifies as emergency?
Yes, the hard part with the 441s is the judges are going to require a little bit more scrutiny to prove your situation. So, you can have them all the time where we all know what's going on. A lot of activity in and out, this, that, or that. But if you've got police reports that regular gunfire and like I said, my 441 is the heroin and prostitution case where I've got pictures and of some stuff I'm not going to talk about in public. That you can prove it, and the judges are going to generally believe the landlord. And not to mention, I've done dozens of these, and like a couple of people have shown up. Usually the people that are this bad are not the ones that are going to show up in court to defend themselves.
Right.
So generally you're getting default judgments anyway. But yes, if particularly, you may, if you don't have the goods to prove it, you may end up spending money not getting anything. But if it's a real problem, you can file it probably starting Monday in the city. I would think they'll start issuing summonses. The question you're going to run into is the ability, as a bulk filer, I've got contacts that I can kind of push mine to the front of the line, or at least get it someone's attention to pull it out of the line. I don't know how that's going to work with somebody who is doing it on their own, who does, I've got the ability to, my judge is telling me clerks tell me I can file it, is I'm emailing her. She's grabbing it out of the line and putting on a special court date, and then we can go from there. But starting Monday, it is my understanding that at least summonses are going to be issued. I just don't know exactly. Normally I'd say I get them in court in 3 weeks and they're out. But as Patrice right, that would be 441 requires that you can show an immediate threat to the physical safety of the tenants or the landlord, or there's illegal drug use on the property. I'd probably say at this stage, maybe not smoking the occasional joint, but heroin, drug dealing, stuff like that. That's really going to get the judges dander up. And if I've only ever had this once. Destruction of the property more than a year's worth of rent. I only did it once where somebody was turning off the gas to try to blow the building up. So that one's going to be a rare one. Generally, it's going to be physical threat of violence. Something like a tenant saying, "I'm going to shoot you if you come back to my property," or somebody who's regularly having gun battles in the streets. I don't know if it's something to where one time I had someone called me yesterday where the ex-boyfriend came by and wouldn't let him in, and he shot a couple shots into the door. I'm not certain that had the potential to say it's an immediate threat, like he's coming back tomorrow to also do that. But you can try. You can at least file it. And my guess is if you get in front of our judge, she's not going to the person's not going to show up, and you have better than average chance as long as, there's some serious stuff, they're going to grant you the order. Then it's just about getting the sheriff to actually do it, which is the hard part. Before they reopen, is I've got to get special orders from the judge to grab a sheriff to do something that they're not doing. So it's possible that I'm even in an immediate eviction situation, I might not be able to evict them until July when they start doing things. But in a normal world, they're supposed to come out the same day that you actually get your judgment, which is the first day of court. You have your trial or default, and then they come out later that afternoon and boot them.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, starting Monday, I think you probably could. You could at least get it on file and try, which is what I'm, considering the fact that if it's a normal case, you're not going to get them in court until August. It's probably worth the effort to try the 441s, even more so than in the past.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. It sounds like it's got to be a pretty immediate thing, a real threat then, unlike whatever normal is.
Yeah, usually a 441, you're talking, these are the worst of the worst tenants that they don't get the standard courtesy of a 10-day warning to get out. You're getting into court and you're booting them. But a lot of times I say, well, let's not push it because I can get them in court, after the 10 days in 3 weeks anyway. But in this case, your typical unlawful detainer is going to be much slower than in general. So if you think you got 441, it might be worth the risk to file it, even if you end up losing, because generally these things tend to work out one way or the other, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay, well that's very helpful, Chris. Anybody else have any questions? It still sounds like your best bet on all this going on right now is to try to work something out with your tenant, if at all possible.
Yeah. That's what we're telling. Even for people who are filing, I'm giving more of and Christine's doing the same thing. We're saying, reach out to them. Even if you wanted to file to backstop the bleeding, still keep talking with them. We're getting a lot of pushback from our clients saying, well, I don't want them to stay. I don't want, they won't talk to me, this, that, or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to wait and some of them, I tell them, like, you're just going to wait, and they go, it's fine. I don't want to deal with them. I just want them out. That's fine. But the more you can talk to them, the more, even if you're saying,
even if it's a deal, they're going to break, who cares?
Yeah, you want a deal that they're going to break if it's someone you want out. So,
Right.
Don't get $50 a month payment plan. But if it's the rent plus an extra $200 and you're saying they're never going to keep it, they've never paid on time, if they're willing to sign it, great.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get them out a lot sooner than us going through the court process. So don't, I guess your worst case scenario, if they're a tenant you just want gone, is that they actually pay it. But I would think that's a good problem to have, and probably an unlikely problem in this scenario. Now, if it's someone who they refuse to work with you and they answer your phone calls, they ignore your text, then it is what it is. But I would say trying is always, it's on, you're going to be on you, the landlord, to try to take that extra step. Because even in a pro se scenario, if you can get them to sign something, now granted, you're probably going to need the forms and things like that. The judge before your court date, as long as you can find a way to get it into court, which is a little bit tougher now than it normally would be. And as attorneys, we're able to email the judges, e-file things, and they're signing them. Now we can't do anything with the sheriff until July, but at least it gets you down the road, as opposed to right now. I suspect if you filed a case, you're looking at an August court date, realistically.
Well, that's very helpful. Written agreement, I know always goes a long way. And maybe if nothing else, they'll take better care of your property if you're going to get rid of them anyway.
Right. I mean, I found that if you're able to work something on, the tenant thinks that, even if you're saying, I'll give them all the way until July to get out, if the tenant thinks they had some sort of say in it and they've agreed to things, then they're much less likely to, I don't know, I've seen it happen, but much less likely to trash the place on the way out. You can throw in there, a tenant has to leave cleaning with the place broom clean and things like that.
Right.
And they may do it, but I found it more time, at least if they think they have to, if they think they've agreed to it and you were reasonable with them, then maybe they'll actually do it. And some people are just, they're going to do it anyway. They're going to do what they want to do.
Right. Yeah, that's very, very good advice, Chris. Thanks. Anybody else have any questions here? I think you guys did a great job updating us today. I mean, it sounds like everything's moving along, slowly but surely.
I mean, the good news is every day you'd seem to hear about the cases going down, which is all what we care about from our perspective, of course, we're concerned about the law, people getting sick and all that, is that the more the cases go down, the more the courts are reopen, the more we can get back to some sort of normalcy. One thing you want to think about as you start talking about whether or not you're going to do anything is, particularly for somebody, most of you all who are, single family or smaller, but don't have the CARES Act blocking you, come September, it's going to be a flood of the big complexes behind. So you want to get your cases on file before, at the very least, before August 24th, whenever you're going to have, more cases in the month of September than I think we would have ever seen. And you'll be filing a case, and even if the courts are open, they're going to have you backlogged for a while. So now, if you're doing it pro se, maybe the pro se dockets won't change a lot, but if you're thinking about hiring an attorney who puts you on the September the dockets with the big file, with the big complexes, you may want to, contact your attorney sooner than later, just because you're going to get behind the 8 ball, and then, it's just going to be it's going to be insane how many people, and it's unfortunate, but there's just going to be a lot of people who, during this time, during the CARES Act, when you're told you can't be evicted, you're going to spend the money elsewhere on food, house items, and nobody can get behind for 5 months in rent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just once you get that far behind, it's just on. I know Christine's the same way. I'm sure I have clients they're waiting. They've got them lined up, and they're going to start filing as soon as they can.
Okay, that date was August, was it 24th, you said? August
24th. So if you have a CARES Act property, meaning Section 8, LIHTC, federal backed mortgage that is preventing you from filing, you want to keep 2 dates in mind. The first one is July 25th. On July 25th, you want to send out a letter, regular mail, post in the door, something telling them they have 30 days to pay or move out. Because if you don't, even come August 24th, you could run into some problems about being able to file. Then August 24th, which is 30 days past the 25th, you file your case, and no one's going to make a stink about it. But I would, that's what you kind of want to keep in mind about that, because you don't want to run into a situation. We don't know how the laws are going to be applied, come September, if they're behind then. So you just want to make sure, if you get that, you give them the 30 days on July 25th to make sure you're not barred, and you don't have any defense attorneys running in, or legal services attorneys saying, you didn't send this, therefore they're out. So if you're not covered by a federally backed mortgage, don't worry about it. But if you have Freddie, Fannie, VA, FHA, something like that, which is typically, or Section 8, then you do have to give them that notice. So that's something to keep that date in mind, so you're not surprised, and then you end up, even if you wait the 30 days, if you don't send a notice, hypothetically, you could be barred from moving forward.
Okay. Okay, very good. All right. All right. Well, thank you. Do we have any other questions there?
Yeah, I had one, if it's okay.
Okay, Harry. Sure.
Yeah, so with things in the pike, you figure it's probably gonna be what, August before a sheriff could show up anywhere? Just the reality of what's going on now,
So just
August, September?
so if you sent one, if you filed one or sent one to us, I'm expecting next week to get a July court date. It's probably, you're probably looking July 15th-ish at the earliest, probably more, somewhere in that range. We don't know for sure how many cases they're going to cap on each docket. So we don't know how far out it could be. But even, let's assume you get a July 15th court date. That means, let's assume they don't show up. Or even if they do show up when we give a standard, 10, 14-day stay of execution on, which is what normally we do. That means you're getting, July 25th as your stay of execution date. Then you got to wait for the sheriff. Once the execution stay passes, that, in a typical world, that's 10 to 14 days. In a world where they're behind, you're probably looking more like 3 weeks or so.
It just depends, because we don't know
We
when
don't,
they're
we
gonna
don't, we don't know
restart
how
it.
far
We don't
behind
know.
they're going to be. So realistically, August, yes.
Yeah.
If they make you go all the way to the sheriff, you're looking at sometime in August of getting them out. So if you file, right now, it's probably a little bit later. So I mean, it's just the later you wait, the later it goes. The hope is that they start expanding court dates. Maybe even if they keep it in video, we might even be able to get more cases passed through.
File and get mine. I feel
But,
like that's the best we can.
Yeah, our advice is if you're going to have to put somebody out, or you're fairly certain they're not going to respond to you trying to give them cash for keys or just kind of giving them subtle hints, then go ahead and file and get in line. As I've told my clients, August is better than September. That's all we can really tell you. And if you're worried about, oh, what if they move up beforehand? I've paid all this money. Well, that's a good problem to have at this stage, because if they move out ahead of time, great. But at least you've got them, in the queue, and you're not waiting until September, October. We honestly don't know how backed up they're going to be. So we could, in a scenario where things kind of go back to normal, but I think it's going to be. My understanding is even once they get back to the level of live court, social distancing is going to mandate that they can't have 100 people in a courtroom. They just can't do it. And particularly with the fear of a relapse in November and stuff like that, I don't think we're going to have normal court until there's a vaccine. To be honest with you, 2021 spring, I heard the news today, maybe January, but you're probably looking at, it's just not going to be a normal scenario in the courts for another year. I mean, it's just going to be you can't stop a train like this and then have it, just restart it at a certain point.
Yeah.
So, it's about bearing with it, maybe getting a little more creative. If you have any questions about how to get creative, I've been working with clients and do some things, not illegal things, but more creative things than we normally would do for problem. And, that may
Well,
be
let me
some.
ask you this. I figure with the way things are going, I'm figuring like with mine, August, September, because the backlog is going to be unbelievable. And I'm hoping the sheriff just basically walks up and says, okay, we're done, and they walk off, with the property, because they're not going to want to go in. But with our leases, and knowing that this is going to blow back up again, does it matter if we put any kind of different verbiage in, or as soon as
There's
we're on
nothing you
suspect something, we should just file immediately, because knowing this is going to happen again when the fall comes?
Yeah, there's nothing you can do in your lease that can speed up the process. And in a general world, honestly, the sheriff doesn't go anymore anyway. We've had reports in the city of the sheriffs don't even get out of their car half the time.
Yeah.
It's just there's nothing you can do to speed up the process more. The courts are set up. You can't get around it. I've had clients who show me leases. Well, it says I can take the door, take possession immediately. You just can't. You can't put illegal things in a lease and have it work. So don't get worried about changing your leases to speed things up. It's just kind of
I was thinking to help you guys out on your end.
And I wish there was. There's
Okay.
just nothing that your standard lease is going to be just as effective now, and there's nothing outside of that you can really do. Unfortunately.
And one thing that might help you guys is I've got 2 police departments on the 441, And after the city prosecutor released the people without charges that were vandalizing the stuff, they're not even writing reports. It's a waste of their time because of what happened with the looting. So I mean, that's going to make it hard for you all to even get a report or documentation on that.
That, I mean, that is some of the issues. We've got like my heroin case, the police won't even come out. So that's why we've resorted to taking pictures of needles and, things like that, and again, I'm not overly worried that this particular tenant's going to show up to court. I'm more annoyed that I can't get a summons. So, into court, I'll put somebody out, but it's just getting into court, getting a court date, and the judges nobody knows what they're doing, and it's not for lack of trying. It's just brave new world. There's 16 layers of bureaucracy they've got to get through to do it, especially in the city and the county. St. Charles and Jefferson, they're kind of whatever. You don't have to wear a mask in Jefferson, so it's but it's a kind of a brave new world. We all got to kind of grin and bear it.
Yeah, it's definitely a change.
So do you think that we're going to have more Zoom meetings probably in the future, Chris, coming up here?
You're talking about court stuff?
Yes, in the future coming up.
I think you're going to have, in some way or fashion, some of the cases being Zoom until at least August in the city and the county. I don't know for sure. I think they're going to try to get creative to have a way for some people to be in Zoom, some people to be in person as a way to get more people through it. I don't think they know for sure what they're going to do. I think they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants. If the Zoom for the next month works, I think it's more likely they continue it longer because it's worked well so far. They might have a scenario where I could see where the attorneys don't come into court, but they give the option for some people to be on Zoom. And if the tenants happen to show up in court, there's a way for them to contact through Zoom at the courthouse, the attorneys. It's just hard to say what they're going to do. I mean, they may, they're telling me now, at least in the city, and I don't know how the county's doing, but they're telling me that their July, which at first they told us it was going to be in person. Now they're saying they just don't know how they're going to do it. We may have some sort of hybrid court.
July won't be in person in the county.
Yeah, she's saying July, it's going to be all Zoom in the county. So we're just going to have to play it by ear. My guess is it might be call dockets are Zoom, WebEx, trials are the only things that are in person, which makes some sense. It sounded like it was a little more productive in the county because they have the breakout thing. The city hasn't quite figured that out yet. We had one where somebody showed up. I want to make a deal. So we continued it off, and Kathy called him, and she didn't answer the phone.
Yeah.
3-4 calls, nothing. But he was full of it. So I was able to tell judge, we're setting it for trial. We're not doing this continuance thing, and now it's set for trial. And I did get a trial setting, but not until July 8th. So this gal who hasn't paid since January is probably going to be in there until August.
But I was kind of wondering, what about like next year? Do you think this might be a kind of something that they're going to do somewhat of next year instead of live?
I think they're going to have, I think this is going to be a long-term, they're going to start doing more and more of this stuff. This is something we talked about. They might do eventually 5-10 years from now. It might be, this is kind of booting them up to it, but I don't know. Well, we have a guest appearance.
Hi,
I can't-
everybody. I was actually, this is so funny because everything, is related. I was just on a WebEx meeting for my Supreme Court Civil Justice Reform Commission. And our last meeting in February, before we really got into this pandemic, we were exploring ways to allow remote witness testimony, allow defendants to check in with the court remotely, that kind of thing. And so, we're all doing that now. And we thought our committee was going to end this month with our recommendations that we had made, but now the Missouri Supreme Court wants us to go on because we're always having these experiences and learning about doing these dockets. So I think it's going to be, it's already happening now in some forms, and it's going to be, adopted by courts. They're asking us to draft rules and get ready to be doing this permanently, even after the pandemic, when we can get back to court. There is, I'll share an interesting tidbit with you. One of the big the two big challenges, I think, are jury trials and the big bulk dockets. And apparently in St. Charles, they are considering having jury trials in the St. Charles Arena so that everybody can be socially distant. Yeah, they can put a big jury panel in there. And yeah, one of the judges was out investigating that. So if it's very frustrating to you and to us about not being able to get stuff done, I can tell you there are people who are working really hard to figure it out. It's just challenging. So I think we're going to have a certain amount of remote appearances permanently, even after this is over. I'm sure Chris and Christine filled you in on our various counties and what's going on.
Yeah, we've already been.
Okay, are there any other questions?
I think you guys did a good job updating this. Does anybody else have any other questions? I don't see any. Sounds like things are moving along. Yeah, I was just kind of curious about remote in the future, and you kind of answered that. You guys did.
Yeah, I think it was going to be like a 5 or 10 year study, and I think now it's going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, right. It's already happening. So we're working on ways to make it more efficient and make it fair to everybody.
That sounds very interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? No. Well, thank you for visiting with us again and keeping us updated. It's been very helpful the last several weeks, and we really appreciate it.
Well, we'll see you next week.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Bye now.